Welcome to the second part of our class on how to thrive and advance in the consulting industry. In part 2, we reveal 4 more secrets, including who the real boss is, why it is important to understand structure, the value of determining the vital few, and Henry Ford's secret to success. Let's begin with the 4th secret that Eve learned, which is surprisingly unclear to many employees in the consulting industry, or other industries for that matter. It is not uncommon for projects to have very tight schedules, which can implode when an indecisive client decides to change direction midway through the effort. It can be infuriating when this occurs, and some managers pacify their frustration by blaming the client for causing extremely high stress levels. This blame can be carried from project to project, eventually devaluing the customer. In fact, some managers may proclaim after a couple of beers that it would be much easier and better without any clients at all. Wait, what? You know that without any clients, we would not have jobs. Jake interjected into a conversation between 2 of his coworkers who were client complaining. He had a pretty good reputation for client service and loyalty. This was more than likely because he believed every career in consulting revolves around one simple secret. Employers only handle the money. It is the customer who pays the wages. This was a quote by Henry Ford that Jake kept framed on his desk. It is also the 4th secret to thrive and advance in the consulting industry. The client is the real boss. Eve picked up on this message and began treating each client like they were also her boss. The results led her to a simple revelation. Happy client equals happy boss, and she practiced this, with remarkable results. The more her clients valued Eve, the more her company needed her, and were willing to pay her for it. But this alone wasn't enough for her to earn promotions. On her first day of work, Eve had asked Gary how she could advance in the company.
Slow down. You just started, so you'll have plenty of time to take my job. Seriously though, just do what I did. I worked a lot of overtime. I mean a lot.
He patted her on the back and walked down the hall. Eve had just started her career, but she thought there had to be more to advancement than spending weekends in the office. Her thoughts turned to 63-year-old Carl, sitting in his corner cubicle. He believed he had played the system by spending 60 hours in the office each week. He wasn't actually working most of that time, but he was recording the hours. A few years ago, the company had figured out what was going on, but kept Carl around because he wasn't paid that much, brought in donuts on Fridays, and kept the nighttime security costs low. So maybe that was the advice Gary was offering. Carl's approach was based upon a few dinosaurs on the management team who liked to reminisce about the old sweatshop days. They were left over from the pre-technology era, when the output from employees sitting at their desks was all relatively consistent. So they believed that the time the employees spent in their seats directly correlated to production, and employee overtime was the only way to increase output. And they also believed the earth was flat, and no government computer would tell them otherwise. Eve didn't drink their Kool-Aid and had easily figured out that all good companies have a structure that can be navigated by the employees to reach higher career heights. The stages typically represent a specific area of responsibility, like production, management, business operations, etc. But the structure can vary from company to company. Our 5th secret is to understand the specific staircase that represents the path for employees to advance, fill in each stage, and determine how employees ascend to the various levels. It didn't take long for Eve to observe how coworkers advanced up the levels by collecting knowledge and experience in various areas, like badges that are needed in order to be invited to the next step. But there were some employees that were covered in badges and not going anywhere, while some seemed to move up with only just a few badges. This did not seem fair to Adam. In the beginning, he would mansplain to Eve that management has its favorites, and that's how you get promoted. You have to kiss some butts to advance. Unimpressed with Adam's opinion, Eve asked her new mentor, Jake, how the process worked. So Jake opened up his MacBook to show Eve our next secret, which was actually discovered about 140 years ago. But only a minority of people know of it, and even less follow it. In the late 1800s, Vilfredo Pareto discovered that 80% of the wealth in Italy was owned by 20% of the people, and the 80-20 principle was born. For all the data crunching and numbers, the true significance of the Pareto principle is the validation that within any subset, there are a vital few that impact the majority of results. This is true for groups like production teams, where it is not unusual for a portion of the group to produce the majority of the work. It is also true for clients, because a small percentage of clients typically accounts for the lion's share of revenue and profit. And it can also be correlated to a few vital daily tasks for each employee that result in the bulk of their output. The 80-20 principle has such a wide and valuable application that it represents the sixth secret on our list. Expanding this further means that there are a few vital skills that will achieve greater impact in accomplishing the objectives at each career level. Eve realized that knowing which skills or badges carry the greatest value would provide a significant advantage, kind of like insider trading tips on the road to professional development. So she set out to begin focusing on those skills with the greatest impact at her level. So Eve should next decide which badges she considers most vital to her advancement, right? Well, not quite. It isn't Eve who has the power to decide when she advances. The critical perspective is the one that controls the results. Thus, seeing the perspective of those in control is a powerful skill and our seventh secret on the list. Eve liked Jake's quote from Henry Ford so much that she invested in a book of Henry Ford quotes, and one evening she found the following 33 words that would change her life. If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. So Henry Ford narrowed his secret to success down to one skill. That is the ability to see the other person's perspective and understand why it is important to them. I call this the power of perspective. It wasn't until Eve was working late one night that she began to understand just how powerful this message was. She had been asked to compile handouts for a meeting that the president had the next morning with his biggest client. As Eve assembled the packets, she made an effort to learn the different options he had prepared for the client. She found herself continuously switching between documents to create a side-by-side comparison. She thought out loud to the empty office. If I was the client, it would sure be helpful to have one sheet that compared all the options. She stopped what she was doing, went to her desk, and spent the next 30 minutes creating a summary page for the handout. She stapled it to the front of the packets and left them on the president's desk. The president returned from his meeting the next day and headed straight to his office. He drafted a memo recommending that Eve be placed on the fast track for career development. The summary page she added was a huge hit with the client, and happy client means happy boss. Eve now understood that seeing the other person's point of view, especially the client's, could be a very valuable tool for her development. It is this seventh secret that unlocked the mystery of which badges were the most important. If Eve could see the perspective of those who controlled her advancement, she could see which badges held the greatest value, and most importantly, why. Even if the objectives for each level were written on billboards, it's understanding why they are important that would add clarity, focus, and alignment to her actions, and that can only be understood from seeing the perspective of those in charge. Eve could now understand why some of her co-workers struggled to follow directions, while a few others would excel when given the same instructions. The difference was seeing the importance from the manager's perspective. Part 2 in our series reminds us that in order to advance you have to first understand how the system works, starting with the importance of the client and the valuable role they play in your career. Next, the structure of your company provides the roadmap for you to navigate your way upwards. Each level requires mastery of a specific set of skills, a vital few that offer the greatest results. Knowing these vital skills that will help you advance to the next level can be determined by seeing the perspective of those who control your advancement. What they place the highest value on will achieve the greatest results. Your Part 2 action items include creating an outline of your company's structure and developing objectives for advancement at each level based on the perspective of those who are in control. Also use the power of perspective and practice seeing each client or colleague interaction from their point of view as well as your own.